Being on the front line of the contingent workforce for the past 5 years, we've seen many changes. So, what would you say those are?
So I'd say the biggest change, right? We do see a lot, but the biggest change has to be the supply of contingent workforce professionals. And what I mean by that is that historically, the humble temp was used in clerical roles, employed into light industrial environments, manufacturing environments. And I think what's changed is that we've seen that role elevated, brought into business critical roles, and in some cases, all the way up to the C suite. So we are seeing a rapid evolution of this since COVID of truly skilled professionals that are interested in this type of work, appreciate the flexibility it brings to their lives, appreciate the impact that they can make on different types of businesses at different stages of their life cycle. So ultimately, it's organizations starting to realize that a temp can now really and the work arrangement that historically was used for temp assignments can now be moved up into these business critical roles, and it's provided flexibility and opportunities that they just didn't have in the past, say 5 to 10 years ago.
I agree. And so, how do you think leaders can better incorporate contingent workforce strategies?
So when they're looking at their talent plan, whether that be on an annual basis, on a quarterly basis, historically the thinking was, very linear. We're going to hire full-time employees. They're going to be in office. They could be managers, they could be directors, they could be associates, VPs, and compensation for the most part was pretty standard. Base, bonus at a certain level, equity depending on the size of the business and the impact of the role. And that is now, sort of different. It's been turned upside down a little bit, and we have a much more matrixed environment where, leaders can incorporate these contingent workforce strategies, and they can pull in a number of other factors around location. So the variables are the following. You still have FTEs as pillars of the business that are sort of critical and permanent roles that are going to be ongoing for as long as the business is operating. You've got contingent workforce professionals in an interim capacity, in a fractional capacity. You've got independent consultants and skilled contractors to account for. And, now there's also, full, are these folks going to be in the office full time? Are they going to be working a hybrid schedule? Are they going to be working fully remotely? And when you take the different work arrangements and you combine that with, where they're going to work, you really start to create a much more dynamic talent planning environment where an organization can look at multiple factors. Some of the things that should be considered are, how long am I going to need this person? If it's less than 2 years, that contingent workforce professional might make more sense. If it's a part-time need on a weekly basis and not a full-time need, that contingent workforce professional might make more sense. And if it's a project-based type of assignment where you might consider going to a consultancy, contingent workforce professional might make more sense, right? So you see the pattern here. There's an opportunity to pull different levers and access talent in a way that companies weren't able to, 5 to 10 years ago. And now they can create efficiencies and address work in a way that might make more sense for them.
Exactly. And something else that they should consider at the moment of assessing their talent needs is the stage of their cycle that they're at, right? If they're a
Absolutely.
startup or in the early stages, then it might make more sense to have someone on a fractional or interim basis, like what you mentioned earlier. But that could change depending on the stage that they're at.
Absolutely. This is a big part of it is understanding that these needs evolve based on the life cycle of the business, based on the size. There's going to be different needs, right? And so, to your point, A startup may want to access a talent that they can't quite yet afford on a full time basis. They can get them on a fractional basis. And now, as these companies grow and evolve, you're going to start to see, for instance, the project based needs play a bigger role. Think implementations is probably the best example of this. And this is where we start to see, at least with our client base and our partners, an interest in the skilled contractors. If organizations are going through a period of change, restructurings, reorganizations, there's an opportunity to once again leverage a contingent workforce to bridge gaps that otherwise they weren't able to bridge before. So there's really, you start to see these opportunities to be more efficient with time and resources by pulling various levers.
So let's talk about cost effectiveness. What are some factors that might make the contingent workforce more cost effective?
Absolutely, and this is, I think, might is the key word there because, for sure, there is at times sticker shock with a bill rate associated with a contingent workforce professional, but when effectively deployed, these strategies can be highly cost effective. So there's a couple of factors. There's a reduced upfront cost in the form of, it's lacking placement fees at the start of a hire, also reduced onboarding fees, right? So there is a pay as you go model in the contingent workforce approach where you're just paying for the work that's done, not for the downtime between projects, the downtime on any given week where someone is perhaps not fully utilized, right? So, although that sticker price seems higher up front, there's an incredible savings in terms of the hours that are put into the work and the hours that are not put into the work. And one of the actually greatest cost savings comes in the form of the protection of your employment brand. So a mistake that we saw organizations make historically that was very damaging to their employment brand was in a period of hyper growth, hyper opportunity, looking to seize that. They would go out and make a number of hires, right? And they would do a blitz of sorts. We've even heard that word thrown around in the recruitment space over the years. And once that opportunity started to kind of cool down and they could no longer approach, the market in the same way, they had mass layoffs. And of course, that information would be in the news cycle, that would be circulated by by whispers in the marketplace. The conversations you can't even see are sometimes the most damaging to your employment brand. And the contingent workforce allows companies to manage expectations up front. Hey, we're bringing you on. We have a project. Sometimes you may get to work 40 hours a week. Sometimes it's going to be 20, but we're not misleading you about what you're going to get out of this ultimately. And this may end at some point, right? And we'll give you some notice. We can agree on a notice period. But it's not going to be an abrupt ending once that opportunity goes away and suddenly you've created this damage to your hiring brand. So to recap, you have the reduced costs upfront of fees and onboarding. You have the flexibility of only paying for the work that's done and not for the downtime in between. And ultimately, the greatest cost savings is the reputation of your hiring brand in the marketplace. Are all just super critical to think about.
And that is not to mention the severance packages that you have to
Oh
offer.
my gosh, yeah, that really is just really hits the P&L in a very real way. As a great point. So really, when you kind of pull all these topics together, what we're seeing more and more is that organizations are moving from historically being reactive in terms of how they leverage the contingent workforce to now being more proactive in terms of how they plan for the contingent workforce. And we think that's just a very good thing, both for companies and for talent.
Absolutely. I think that it allows companies to scale up and scale down and that flexibility allows for cost savings to happen and to protect your brand as an employer. There are just so many benefits that come from hiring contingent employees.
Absolutely. When the case makes sense and the time is right, you got it.